Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing another album review. I'm going to be looking at this one here, which is Reckoning by R.E.M, their second album. So I'll just be doing the usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album and then showing you my vinyl copy and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. So yeah, this was R.E.M's second studio album released on the 9th of April in 1984. So it followed on from the release of Murmur, the debut, where they were pretty much like on like a kind of like a productive role, like writing a lot of like great quality songs, like and kind of like very much like being like very productive, averaging around like two like album worthy songs like songs like per week. So much so that guitarist Peter Buck actually suggested that for the second album they actually make a double album. Now that idea was shot down, but initial sessions for the album did take place in November of 1983 with ex-Neil Young producer Elliot Mazur. However, the band were not satisfied with these sessions, like with the outcomes like of like these sessions, so instead regrouped with the same production duo who had done Murmur, who were Don Dixon and Mitch Easter, and recorded this album fairly quickly, recorded over 16 days in December 83, January 84 at Reflection Sound Studios in North Carolina. The attempt, I think, for this album was to capture more of their live sound that had been evident, like, on Murmur, which had been quite, I guess, experimental, like, in places, you know. This record, though, they wanted it to really, I guess, pop out the speakers, and that's why, for many of the tracks, like, they used, like, a binaural recording technique, essentially, where you kind of use, like, two microphones kind of placed, like, sometimes that you can place, like, in, like, a kind of, like, a dummy head. It kind of gives, like, a bit of, like, a surround sound kind of feeling, like to like the recording, so yeah, it's quite a unique sounding album, very big sounding album. Now during the making of this album there were some pressures though from their label IRS to make the album a bit more commercial, with letters repeatedly sent to the two producers, which the producers said to the band that they were just ignoring. But certainly when you listen to this, you almost can't help thinking that maybe it did rub off slightly on the producers / the band, because for me, this album does feel a lot more immediate and a lot more commercial, I guess, certainly, than Murmur does. Chart-wise, the album was another step in the right direction for R.E.M. It reached number 27 on the US charts, which was a steady improvement on Murmur's 36, and in the UK, it got to number 91, again, building on the success of Murmur, which only, success of Murmur, that album only got to number 100 here. So yeah, this one getting to 91, a little bit of progress there. I guess just a general thing with that is just so the band were gaining momentum, and kind of steadily building a much wider audience, and that was also matched, I guess, through the critical reception for the album, which was also really positive. Rolling Stone magazine said that the overall sound is crisper and the lyrics as far more comprehensible, certainly when compared to Murmur, which often did have murmurings of lyrics on it. The Washington Post wrote that the songs on the album trump even Murmur's outstanding songwriting, and stated that at the time there isn't an American band worth following more than R.E.M, and it was ranked at number 7 on the NME's end of year list and number 6 on Village Voice, kind of similar kind of poll of various critics. So yeah, all round a pretty well acclaimed album here. So I will now show you my vinyl copy over here. This is I believe an original UK pressing I found at a record fair in Manchester a good couple of months ago. You can tell it's a UK version because they actually wrote the title Reckoning on it here. I think most other countries it just says R.E.M in that box, but we got the title on it here. This cover painting is a really interesting cover, I think. I do quite like it personally. The kind of the outline of it was done by Michael Stipe, this kind of two-headed snake kind of thing, and then it was handed over to artist Howard Fisher to kind of fill in with like this kind of watercolor paint. I think it's quite a nice cover personally, yeah. And then you've then got the back cover here, no track listing like on the back or anything. You have got the songs kind of the song titles like in amongst like the snake, which is also I guess why I do quite like it. But there's no track list like on like the back. They're just pictures of the band members. And the inner sleeve itself, again, there's a kind of track list, but it's very difficult to kind of read, you know, very kind of scrawly kind of artwork here. But nice, so it comes with a proper, like, printed inner sleeve. And then, yeah, you've got the record here on the, like, the IRS label there, just on both sides. So, yeah, that is the vinyl record looked at. Okay, so I will now go over each of the album songs in detail. I'll score each track out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So the record kicks off with the song Harbour Coat, which for me is one of my favourites on the album. It's just such a strong, assured start to the album. Some great guitar work on it and fantastic vocal interplay between Stipe and Mills on it. Very cryptic lyrics on this, probably among the most cryptic on this album, in the sense of like kind of like there's lines in it which kind of hint at a kind of sort of uprising of sorts against Soviet Russia. He sings in it. He sings it like they crowded up to Lenin with their noses worn off. A handshake is worthy if it's all that you've got. Metal shivs on wood pushed through our back. There's a splinter in your eye and it reads react, goes like the first verse. And then that kind of like that chorus line, please help me find my harbour coat. I can't go on without it. Seems to kind of veer off like in lag in like another direction. I mean, there's no real, I guess, set meaning to this song, to be honest, but it is a great track, and musically it's stunning. I love that little guitar link which kind of separates the verse like and like the chorus. It just adds another real interesting dynamic to it. Stunning opener for me, an easy 10 out of 10 for Harbour Coat. Okay, next track up is called Seven Chinese Bros, or Seven Chinese Brothers. I think it's written there. It's written there like on the album, but I think on the label and most of the track listings it's Seven Chinese Bros. Again, another cryptic song. This one here. I think the kind of lyrical inspiration behind this was a book called Five Chinese Brothers by an author called Claire Bishop, where one of the brothers has a kind of special power of like swallowing the ocean, and that kind of led to like this line, like on this one here, Seven Chinese Brothers swallowing the ocean, 7,000 years to sleep away the pain. It's got that classic R.E.M. sound in it. All of the music, like the kind of like that great interplay between the kind of bass and guitar, just working really well. I think for me, it's not among my absolute top tier like R.E.M. songs. I just think it's a little bit, it's maybe a little bit unremarkable in terms of its structure. This one here, bass just follows the kind of classic kind of verse chorus kind of structure to it, and it's a kind of feeling that. I guess the chorus does feel like a payoff, but it feels a little bit predictable. It feels like a slightly predictable kind of payoff for me personally, and it's a kind of formula I guess they would settle into, particularly on the second side of this album. But second track, it still feels fresh, still feels quite a vibrant and relatively exciting song. So yeah, I would give that one an 8 out of 10 overall. Next one up is So Central Rain, brackets I'm Sorry, which is another great song, probably the most well-known track on the album, or certainly one of the most well-known. Lyrically, kind of continues a sort of like a recurring theme like on this album of kind of water / kind of rain, kind of representing a kind of sense of kind of hopelessness at kind of being able to patch things up like in like a relationship. The great opening line, delivered with Stipe's fantastic like poetic flair, like he sings like, did you never call, I waited for your call, these rivers of suggestion, they are driving me away, the trees will bend, the cities wash away, the city on the river, the girl without a dream. It's great lyrics, and then that fantastic chorus like the I'm Sorry bit, he just really he really finds his voice on this song, I think, you know, and kind of the vocals kind of come to the fore like so much more like on this album, certainly when compared like to Murmur. Some interesting musical textures on this one. It feels like they're kind of branching out a little bit like on this track, a more predominantly like acoustic kind of foundations to this track, and then some interesting and quite nice piano work like on it like as well. This was the album's first single as well, and it got to number 86 on the US charts, so still would be maybe another album or two before they were having consistent hits, but this is I think well considered like an R.E.M classic. Okay, next one up on the album is Pretty Persuasion. Now, this is actually a song which predates even like the Murmur album, you know, it's one of R.E.M's earliest songs. Which is interesting to think that, like, despite them kind of saying that they were kind of very productive and writing tons and tons of songs, it's actually interesting that, like, they went back, like, on, like, a couple, like, of occasions, like, on this album to really, really early songs, like, off theirs. This is one that they've been playing live since, like, 1980, and it's arguably, I guess I can understand why this one was left over from Murmur, because it feels a lot more anthemic, a lot more kind of joyful, I guess, than perhaps like anything like on like that album. It's a track which apparently the band almost felt a little bit like obliged like to like record. They were encouraged by Mitch Easter to kind of give it a go and sort of like get down a solid studio version of that one kind of thing, you know, because it was a mainstay like off like their live set list. I am glad it's found a way like onto like one of like their studio albums and wasn't just lost to like the kind of pages of kind of like sort of like gig history, you know. This one it is a really good song. They play it really, really, really well. It's a straight ahead song, but it's a muscular song. It really suits the kind of production like on this album, and again you've got some great vocal interplay between Stipe and Mills, so all round solid track there. Pretty Persuasion would get an 8 out of 10 from me. Okay, and then side one closes off with the track Time After Time. Now this one is a real favourite of mine, like on the album. It's a song which I guess does divide a lot of people. I was reading like some reviews before preparing for this video, and yeah, some people were not particularly kind to this track, but I just rather like it. You know, I think it stands out on the album because it is a slower ballad. It's the first kind of, we're taking things down a notch like on this album, but it's delivered with a very kind of Eastern kind of droney kind of feel to it, very 60s, a bit Velvet Underground-y sort of like this track, with a beautifully tender vocal from Stipe and an underrated, understated musical backing. Yeah, you know, like they don't overcook this song. It's just got very nice tasteful drumming. It's got really good guitar work on it, and lyrically again it's slightly cryptic. This track here talks about sort of girl sort of by the water tower's watch. If your friends took a fall, are you obliged to follow? Goes kind of like the first verse. So again, perhaps he's maybe talking about death or kind of suicide or something like along those kind of lines. But it is a good song. It's very distinctive like on the album, and yeah, I said that, yeah, really stands out and is a real favourite of mine. Does not outstay its welcome at all. So yeah, would get a 10 out of 10 from me. Okay, and then we flip over the album onto side 2, which for me overall is definitely the weaker like off like the two sides. I think side 1 very solid, no song below like an 8 out of 10, but side 2 we get a couple of slightly more fillery songs for me. So first of those is Second Guessing, which musically I can't really fault this one. You know, it's energetic. It's got again great musicianship, great interplay between like everyone like involved like on this track, but it's a song which is very actually thin in terms of song content. It's basically very repetitive, just this kind of fast-paced verse which kind of goes like, why are you trying to second guess me? I am tired of second guessing. Basically, it just sort of seems to repeat like the same kind of phrase, or kind of basically saying the same thing, but just kind of phrased like slightly different. And yeah, it's just that one verse, one chorus, like that "here we are" chorus line. It's enjoyable while it's on. It's short enough that it doesn't outstay its welcome, but yeah, I just can't help thinking that it is a kind of slightly half-finished song there. Okay, next track up is called Letter Never Sent. Now this one again is another 7 out of 10 song for me. It's a track about kind of longing and kind of missing home and sort of like not feeling that you have a home, I guess, after a kind of long period like of travelling. One of the lines goes like, when I'm moving too fast, where's my new address? Goes the kind of bridge of it. Musically, again, it's very similar to Second Guessing, very muscular kind of sounding, and a good construction as well to the track where it really builds up to like the chorus. You get some of Michael Stipe's kind of sort of wordless kind of vocalization, which is fine, I think, first time around, but then it becomes kind of the centerpiece like of like the track, and it becomes a little bit distracting / repetitive, I think, like as like the track goes on. It's decent, it's just not, again, it's not going to be a track which I would pick out as a highlight of R.E.M's career like or anything. Yeah, for me, would get a 7 out of 10. Okay, next up on the album is Camera. Now this one is a little bit like Time After Time, a kind of quieter diversion, and I think it works well in terms of sequencing, you know, kind of basically coming sort of after two really upbeat, frantic rockers, and then before a really fun little country number, which we'll get onto. But this one is basically concerns the death of a friend of theirs, like in Athens, like with like the line, like, will she be remembered alone in a crowd. For me, I just think the track is a little bit long in the tooth. It stretches out to almost 6 minutes in length, and I just feel that yeah, it is just a little bit too long. It's nicer while it's on, I think. Buck's guitar work works well. It ticks along, but yeah, it's just far too long for me. It just kind of loses my interest kind of halfway through. But a decent track for the most part. So yeah, Camera would get a 7 out of 10. Okay, next track up we arrive at possibly my favourite on the album, which is Don't Go Back to Rockville. Now, this one, I guess, is maybe not among their most revered songs, I would say. You know, it probably fits into a kind of similar category to maybe say something like Shiny Happy People, possibly, with its very un-R.E.M-like, kind of twangy, kind of country-style song, basically. This is the other track, which is a bit like Pretty Persuasion, one of their very earliest songs, you know, like they performed this, yeah, right back, like in like the early 80s, kind of like 1980, 1981 sort of time, and this one's, I guess, quite unique, like in like their catalogue, you know, although I believe it is credited to all four members. This one was pretty much all written by Mike Mills in a kind of plea to like his then girlfriend, basically not to return home to like her hometown, like off like Rockville, like I think in like Maryland, quite a few states up like from Georgia. Just some brilliant lyrics in it about being basically just kind of like abandoned, like left alone, and it kind of has these kind of quite vivid kind of vignettes of like what like this guy's life is now like, you know, like at night I drink myself to sleep and pretend I don't care that you're not here with me, because it's so much easier to handle all my problems if I'm too far out to sea. Great stuff, and I think it's like I like the lyrical premise of this track. I like the music on it feels joyful, it's got this kind of happy, sad kind of dynamic, which I just really, really like. And I'm, again, just glad it found a home, like, on, like, this second album and just wasn't lost, like, a bit like Pretty Persuasion, like, just wasn't lost to kind of, like, solely being, like, a live concert number. This was the second single from the album, and really disappointing, it didn't chart anywhere, which I'm a bit surprised about. I thought this song might have taken off because it is commercial, it's catchy for sure, but yeah, failed to chart everywhere, but now I think is considered among one of their more popular, more well-known tracks. So yeah, Don't Go Back to Rockville, a 10 out of 10 there from me. And then we finish the album with a track called Little America, which I must confess is a track that I do forget about existing like on the album. It's kind of very much, this record almost ends with kind of Rockville, and this track almost feels like a surprise like every time like it comes on. It's a fast-paced rocker. There's basically about kind of lines about a kind of like an uncertain future, talks about like I can't see myself at 30 and sort of like those kind of lyrics. I mean, it's a track where the band let rip, they really rock out. It's not a restrained performance by any means, but it's just a bit forgettable, and I just yeah, I don't think it really stands up like as a good, memorable, impactful album closer. Okay, so overall this album would score 83%. So I think this is a solid debut album here, but I do think it does perhaps suffer from some of the kind of cliches of kind of difficult second album that, you know, because I guess like, on the one hand, it is a musical evolution from Murmur, you know. It feels in some ways more assured than that album, certainly less dark, but for me, arguably less interesting than like the debut. And again, I can't help thinking that the record company perhaps had some kind of influence like over like the producers in basically making this feel a lot more big, a lot more kind of commercial sounding, like off like a record. Yeah, it certainly feels like a band who are trying to seek like a wider audience. It's an album for me, I guess, where in some ways the sum of the parts are kind of greater than the whole, you know, like where, like, if you were to say pick out random tracks from this album, they're all pretty solid songs, pretty good tracks in their own right. I just think when you put them all together, certainly towards the latter half of the album, it does kind of start to lose something, like a little bit, like lag, and that the songs just don't feel quite as like impactful. But it does, I think, stand quite unique, like in like R.E.M's discography. After this, they would go in a much more kind of polished, kind of studio-based direction, you know, and this almost sits as a kind of quite a unique kind of example of them basically going into the studio incredibly quickly to record, like, you know, and like not really harbouring over like kind of like the songs. And I think when this album is good, it is among R.E.M's best songs. Like some of my favourites, like Harbour Coat and like Don't Go Back to Rockville. But then like as I said, like there's a couple of fillery songs which on a short album like this, there's only 10 tracks. There's not a whole lot of place for things like Little America or Second Guessing to Hide. But no, a good record here, which I would be very interested to know what you all think of it in the comment section. And yep, I will see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.